Hey everyone! So I had a question come up in one of my videos that I think deserves a good response. I try to respond to as many comments as I can, but in this case, one, my comment would be the length of a short novel, and two, this is a question that I think a lot of people have when they're starting out or they're new in the business. So if anyone else has this same question, well, here's my advice. Alright, so here it is. I am now working at a studio, and as a young engineer whose experiences are still fairly new compared to my colleagues, how can I be able to contribute more to complicated recordings with large ensembles or multiple instruments? How can I develop the skill away from work for such things to be better prepared for such events and develop the trust from the studio owners to work on important tasks like that? Scenarios like the one I mentioned above are rare to come by, and the margin for error is super minimal. The studio where I'm at needs help in that area. It's a scary position to be in, which is why I don't blame the other engineers who step back from the task, but I feel capable of being able to help out. Well, that is a great question, and I'm going to start by telling you a story.
Gather around, kids, it's story time.
Oh God, here we go. Back in my day. Back in the days before automation, computers, the internet, or sunshine, Al Schmitt was a young engineer working in a studio, and this studio cut a lot of records for some of the biggest acts in the business, and Al at this time was a teenager. He would assist on these big recording sessions, and he would take notes and draw diagrams of what he saw, and try to be the best assistant that he could be, and prepare himself for the time when he could do recordings like these. And they gave him a lot of the smaller stuff to do, you know, voiceovers and commercials, smaller music acts, things like that. So he was there on a Saturday, and he looked at the schedule book, and it said Mercer. So he was waiting for Mr. Mercer to arrive. Well, elevator opens, and all these musicians start pouring out, and he says, "What's going on?" "We're here for the recording session." What recording session?" "It's for Mercer Records. We were booked for a recording session today." Mercer in this case was Mercer Ellington, Duke Ellington's son. It was the Duke Ellington band. So imagine what his reaction was. He's a teenager. That's like the equivalent today of you're waiting around to do a voiceover for a car dealership and the Foo Fighters show up. So he tried to call the studio owner, couldn't get a hold of him. He tried to call the head engineer, who at that time was Tommy Dowd. Couldn't get a hold of him, so he was stuck doing this recording session. So he got out his notebooks and looked at his notes and his diagrams, and he set up the session the way that they did for a session like this, and just did the best he could, and it turned out all right. He said it wasn't the best recording I ever did, but it certainly wasn't the worst. But I think the best part of the story, especially considering, you know, what we know about Al Schmitt and his career now, is this.
You know, I think if I'd known the night before that I was going to have to record the Duke Ellington band, I probably wouldn't have come to work. I would have been so nervous.
So my point in telling you this story is, the day when you have to head engineer a big project may be thrust upon you sooner than you think. And if this is what you want to do, you gotta be prepared for it. So my advice to you is this. Number one, be present. You need to be there to assist and observe on every recording session that you can. Now, if you're saying I'm not on the schedule for all of these, can you volunteer for them? If you're not on the schedule as the assistant engineer, maybe you can ask them, "Hey, I'd really like to see this session. Can I sit in on it? Can I play the role of unpaid intern on this session and schlep coffee so I can at least see and observe and take notes on this?" This will show your supervisors that you are eager to learn and that you're excited for the prospect of taking on some of these bigger projects and that you're willing to take on the challenge. And by the way, the fact that you're asking this question in the first place, you're already ahead of the game. Number two, take notes. On all of these sessions, take notes, draw diagrams, and if you're allowed, take pictures. Sometimes you're not allowed to take pictures, so you gotta make sure you have permission to do that. Number three, practice. Will this studio allow you to have some alone time so that you can do some practicing and get to know the signal flow? Every studio is going to approach the signal flow a little bit differently, and sometimes that's the biggest challenge to overcome, is making sure you know how to get the signal from the microphone into the I/O or into the console or however you run things there. Anyone can set up a bunch of microphones in a studio, but if you can't get the signal from the microphone into the recording unit, then I guess we're not recording, are we? So learn the signal flow and give yourself some practice projects so that you are prepared when the time comes when you have to do something bigger. Here's an idea. Will they let you bring in an amateur band? Or maybe you can start some kind of studio program like New Beginnings or something like that, where you bring in new bands who haven't been in the recording studio before to give them a chance to record for free or at a low cost. And that way the financial risk isn't so big for the studio owners. The point is, don't wait for them to give you something to do. Give yourself things to do that will help your understanding, whether it's learning the signal flow of the entire facility or learning a specific piece of gear. Now, if you do finally get that chance and you're put on the schedule for a big recording, make sure you get there plenty early so that you can get things set up ahead of time and make sure things are working. Next, freelance recordings. So do you have any of your own gear? Can you record anything outside of the studio? Maybe you can record an amateur band in their house. Or if you're doing classical or ensemble recordings, maybe you can volunteer at a local high school to record their concerts or maybe their recitals. And finally, live sound. Nothing improves your studio chops more than doing live sound. And that is not just my opinion. I have heard a lot of engineers say that they became much better engineers in the studio after doing live work for a while. And the reason why that is because in live sound, you're always solving problems. There's always things that you've got to connect and things that won't work and that you got to track down the problem and get it done fast, because that showtime is going to come whether you're ready or not. So to the person who left that comment, I hope that gives you some ideas. And for those of you who have the same question, again, I hope that helps. But I've seen this and heard about this from other engineers time and time again, where they got their big break because someone was sick or someone didn't show up or there was some scheduling mishap, and suddenly you find yourself in the head engineer chair. One of the biggest obstacles to overcome, aside from signal flow, is confidence. And you will build more confidence the more you are in the studio, the more you're involved, even if you're just an assistant or if you're just observing. That will give you more confidence in practicing anytime you can. Anytime you have the opportunity to pick up a piece of gear or read a manual or do a smaller recording or whatever the case may be, take those opportunities anytime they come. Don't wait for someone to hand them to you. So I wish you the best of luck, and viewers, if you have any suggestions, constructive suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. All right, take care everybody. I'll see you later.